Today's class, today's Chumash shir, today's Megillas Roos shir on page 1269 is sponsored by Rolf Lederer. It's with a deep sense of gratitude to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He had successful cataract removal. The surgery, Baruch Hashem, went very well. So we are thankful to Rabbanu Shalom as well. So we are thankful to Rabbanu Shalom for the success of the surgery. We are thankful to Rolf for the sponsorship. So indeed, a Yasher Koach. Thank you. And only gesund we should hear. Megillas Roos. Megillat Roos. So page 1269. Now, in the past, we've had a discussion here about Megillas Roos. And it's quite natural when you study Tanakh to look at names, and to try to figure out perhaps the essence of the person and understand their challenge. What we have to remember is that every person is born with tools. Every person is born with a personality, with traits. And our goal is obviously to use them for the good. And at the same time, those traits, those tools given to us that could and should be used for the good, at times could be misused. So there's no such thing as a bad personality, in essence, from birth. If you misuse it, the person becomes a bad person. Now, as a result, when we look at the names here, and we're going to go ahead and address, in some cases, the strengths of the individual and their contribution. And at times, unfortunately, we're going to look at a few individuals and their names and see their flaws. We're not going to go ahead and claim that the name itself indicates failure from birth, but rather it indicates a personality, and the name itself could have been placed on the positive side. Unfortunately, in some cases, there is misusage. Now, the reason I'm giving this introduction is because in the past, we've given a class here, and we talk about Elimelech. And you have to be very careful because among Chassidim, right, it's a very precious name. Right? We have people here that their fathers were named Elimelech. I think I had two here. You were one of them. Frank Wolf was another one. So it's obviously a very significant and beautiful name, Rabbi Milevsky of Lizhensk, among the Chassidim. Right, they go visit his grave. It's a very specific site that Rabbi Milevsky. Now, so obviously this cannot be a negative name. It can't be that the name itself has a negative connotation, but rather, when done right, it's a person who goes ahead and declares, "I deserve." Right, in other words, I am a carrier, I can make a contribution to the Almighty with who I am. It is important to recognize that people achieve nothing in this world if they do not hold of themselves. In other words, people think that Judaism believes in modesty. And modesty, being an honor, is important. So therefore I should walk around believing I've been garnished and do garnished. Obviously that's not Judaism. What kind of Judaism is that? To do nothing when there are needs in the community, when there are people that need assistance, when there are people that need support, emotional support, financial support. People need to be educated. To walk around and have a system that educates that you're supposed to be an honor, you're supposed to be humble. That's quite problematic. Judaism actually teaches that a person should hold of themselves. I have a lot to achieve, but it's not for me, and it's not because of me, but rather the Almighty has given me tools, and the Almighty has given me tools because there's a job to do. I'm going to roll up my sleeves and use those tools that were given to me to make a difference. So therefore, when you look at many people who were leaders throughout our history, right, there's the name Elimelech. Elimelech meaning Elai Malchut. I am the one. I deserve to make a difference, and I deserve to make it because I am royalty. Every Jew has to feel that they are royalty. You have to have a feeling that you're having an impact on the world. You are making a difference. Jews make a difference. The world is always looking at the Jewish people. The world is always looking at the homeland of the Jewish people. You can have an impact. So there's a positive aspect to Eli Melech, right? In some circles they call it a Gava de Kedusha, like a haughtiness of holiness, they call it. Meaning a person has to hold of themselves to make a difference, right? You have to hold, I can have an impact, and those are the people that make a difference. The misusage is a person that feels, you know what, I am deserving it, but I don't have to do anything. Meaning, do you know the yichus I have? Do you know who my father was? Do you know my grandfather was? And you talk to me like that? Right? You would expect me to go ahead and deal with that communal issue? Do you know who I am? Right? Elai Malchut, I'm deserving of royalty. I'm deserving to be treated like the Queen of England. You think the Queen of England ever, dealt with dirty dishes? Right? You really think so? Obviously, South Africa, right? Obviously not. In Canada, they don't deal with these things. I'm royalty. That's not how you talk to me, right? There was a big to-do that they were filming the Queen once, and they were taking some pictures, and they asked her to take off her crown, and they felt this was a tremendous chutzpah. Like, who are you to go ahead and tell the Queen of England, right? When Diana, they made a whole movie out of it, right? When Diana passed away in '97, right? And it was a big crisis for the Queen. That she has to go ahead and give a deal with this woman who was a challenge to the royal family, right? Elai Malchut. So like every name, it has its positive and it has its negative connotations. That's an introduction here. Yes?
I always thought that name, Eli Melech, means Hashem is my God.
Even better, you have another beautiful way of reading it, that it's a person that achieves things by declaring that Eli, that my God, is my king as well. Another beautiful way of reading it. You are found another way of finding the positive in it. But the negative, right, is obviously Eli. It's not Kel, and obviously when we are achieving things, we are doing it with an understanding that we are messengers of God. There's a negative there of I am deserving. Now, even the names Machlon and Kilion, we don't name. It's not a popular name, even in Israel, I assume. Or they do name their kids. Israelis, now they like the name like Nimrod. Nimrod Boena, sometimes they heard it in the park.
Nimrod?
Nimrod! Tafsiki Machet Sham, Anyway, but Machlon and Kilion did not have a comeback yet. Right? Negative names. Machlon, Machalon. Sounds like a Machala. Machala, right? Now, you have to remember, by the way, that even though Machlon is a Machala, there could be recovery from Machala. And Machlon married Ruth. And Ruth carried on the soul of Machlon, so he had a recovery. And there was a level of mechila there. There was some forgiveness to Machlon, because he married a woman that was, yes, a Moabite, but she proved herself to be a very great woman indeed. So there's Machlon there. On the other hand, the brother who married Orpah, Oref, right, the back of the head, Oref. She turned the back of her head to her mother-in-law, which symbolically, right? She walks her mother-in-law, and the mother says, "No, stay back." She says, "Okay," and she turns back from her mother-in-law. She turns her Oref. She obviously had the potential of turning an Oref to her pagan background. So again, every name has its positive and the negative. But let's focus on Machlon. There was Mechila there eventually, and there was a recovery there due to the fact that his wife joins the nation of Israel and has this tremendous impact. Kilion, on the other hand, Kilion is something, the term means destruction. There's nothing left of him. Unfortunately, he marries Orpah, nothing left of him. If he would have fulfilled his mission, he would have been like a person that is Hakolba, would have been a complete individual, perhaps. Yes?
Could these people have had other names when they were growing up, and they were given these names after, based like post facto?
100%. The Chazal actually give them their different name. Tell us that they actually had different names. And they look in Divrei Hayomim, it was Yoash, I don't recall the exact names, but in Divrei Hayomim they have different names. So it's not so far-fetched that we are actually told, given these names, because we're supposed to read into it. All right? Or you could say that they had the names and it was a level of Ruach HaKodesh. You could take different approaches. But it's not so far-fetched to take what you are mentioning here. Now let's look at the text itself. Vayehi b'yamei, 1269. Shefot HaShoftim. It happened in the days when the judges judged. And you're very familiar with the rabbinic reading here. That it's not just when the judges judged, but actually the judges were judged. Shefot HaShoftim, the judges were judged. And when a judge would go ahead and turn to you and say, why are you not dealing with the corruption in your family? Why are you not upgrading your behavior? You would turn to the judge and you would say, you're telling me what to do, right? Who are you to tell me, right? You have a Mexican name, right? Who are you to go ahead and tell me what's wrong with me? You're a flawed individual. And this is when a society is in the process of collapsing. If leaders are not doing things correctly, if there's corruption among the leaders, right? This is not a healthy society because their concern is not the welfare of the people, right? True leadership is a slavery in essence. In other words, a real leader has to not sleep and be concerned for the welfare of the country. And the goal should not be his comforts, and true. And we do all accept the fact that the Air Force One shouldn't have to wait in line or go through a TSA line because you don't want a person who's running the country waiting in line for 2 hours. We accept that, right? We accept that he deserves it. But the goal should not be for him to be a comfort individual, but the goal is that this is a person that should focus on the welfare of the people. We understand that very well. Shefot HaShoftim, the judges are corrupt. The judges are corrupt. We are dealing here with a society that is corrupt. Fact, right? Now, the media, right, has, you study media over the years. The media has served well by bringing to the public, right, sometimes the flaws of leaders. And we hope that when there's a recognition among those going to politics that the media will make a big splash if indeed you're not 100% kosher, right? All of you went through Nixon, right? And you followed the news. I had great confusion as a kid. There were a few things that confused me as a kid. One of them was, in the summer, in August 1974, we were on a family trip in Washington. We were on a family trip in Washington, D.C., and we took pictures in front of the White House. And my mother sent one of the pictures to the grandparents, I don't know which one, and on the back she wrote, Uziel convinced Nixon to resign. That was the line, because the picture was in front of the White House on August 9th, 1974. And as a kid, I remember seeing it. And I had difficulty, why did my father convince Nixon to resign? It was written on the paper, right? So this is something that I had difficulty understanding. Anyway, so you know Nixon, and you know the benefit that there is someone watching, but, we could go ahead and enter into a discussion, is the media doing too much of a good job? Are they going too far? Bottom line is, in Judaism, what is important for us, a society is judged by its leaders. And a society is judged by who we allow to become our leaders and what their agenda is. And here we are dealing with a tragic period because this leader, when there is a crisis, doesn't deal with the issues, but rather feels, what, me? I'm going to deal with this? Look what he does. Vayehi Rav Ba'aretz, and there is indeed a famine. Famine is a symbol of two things. Number one, that there's the Almighty is unhappy with the people of Israel, because you read biblical texts, you realize that it's all about warning. You don't do what is right, Yishamru lachem, penifte levavchem. That's what the Bible is about, an indication that there's a very serious flaw here. Vayelech ish mi Bet Lechem Yehuda, and a person leaves from Bet Lechem. He makes his way to Sde Moab with his family, hu vishto ushnei banav. Now you have to realize that going to Moab is a problem on its own, because Moabites, at least the males, the Torah warns us that we are not to intermarry with them. A clear-cut indication that we are to separate ourselves from the Moabites. It's a flawed nation. They didn't treat us appropriately. So this is a very problematic departure here by this individual. It's interesting to just, for the record, to know that one of the commentators asked the following question. if indeed it's a nation that is not fulfilling their responsibility, why is the nation, the land of Israel, not destroyed? I mean, look at Torah. Torah tells us you're going to be exiled from the land of Israel. God's going to be upset with you if you don't fulfill the mitzvahs. Obviously, there is a problem here, but we don't find Israel being destroyed as a result. Actually, we're going to see next chapter that they have a tremendous recovery, a very good recovery. And the Al-Sheikh tells us that you should know, when a verse shares with us a problem, and one person does something wrong, that indicates that everyone else did not have that flaw. We have a problem here in Israel. But even when they had a problem, they didn't leave the land of Israel. They stayed there. The people stay in the land of Israel, that's already a merit. For Jews to live in Israel, that's enough of a merit that they did not deserve to be destroyed. One individual had enough within Israel, and therefore he got punished. The others kept their commitment to Eretz Israel. An interesting statement which needs to be studied, but let's look at verse 2. His name is Elimelech. His wife is Naomi. The children are Machlon and Kilion, and they are Ephratim. Ephratim was a woman that we describe in Divrei Yamim that married into the tribe of Yehuda. According to a rabbinic tradition, it's actually Miriam. So therefore, the term Ephrat is, it's a region, of course, in Israel. We know it's a city in Israel now as well. But the term Ephrat was a term that was given to the descendants of the tribe of Yehuda, even though we actually also find it applied to the descendants of Ephraim. Okay? But that's a northern region. So when we talk about Ephrat, when we talk about the Ephrat in Israel, it's the Ephrat that is being referred to here, and it was a title to the members of this family of Yehuda. Now, verse 3, he dies. Verse 4, they marry Moabites. She leaves in verse 6, and she departs from the place itself. Verse 8, she tells them, stay there. And here we have, after Orpah returns, we have in verse 16. So we go, Ruth is going to respond here. And Ruth is going to respond by making it clear, Vatomer Ruth, al tifge'i bi. Don't urge me anymore to leave you. I'm staying with you. Kiel asher telchi elech, wherever you go, I go. Basher talini alin, wherever you go ahead and spend the night, I will. My God is your God. Verse 17, where you die, I will die. Nothing will separate us, because only death is indeed going to separate us. They make their way to the land of Israel, and we're going to find very soon that the nation itself is in recovery mode. What's considered recovery? So the economists would tell you that recovery is that the GDP, there's jobs being increased, right? That the dollar is perhaps stronger, not too strong, right? So in other words, everyone's going to go ahead and give their insight what recovery is. For us Jews, what is recovery? Recovery is that the flaw that exists, the spiritual flaw, has been dealt with. And as we're going to see very soon, the text is going to indicate to us in what way has the flaw been dealt with. Before we deal with that, we have to ask the following question. When Ruth is having this conversation with Naomi, and she indicates, I'm going with you, your nation is my nation, wherever you go, I go. The rabbis analyze the verses, and they tell us that the conversation between the two of them is not just a random conversation, but rather Naomi is hinting to her the difficulties of becoming a Jew. Right? We have Pesach, it's not mentioned, but she goes through the difficulties of joining the nation of Israel. And Ruth accepts them. So they read these verses, they read this conversation, and they see Ruth's journey not just as a physical journey, but as a spiritual journey, and she joins the people of Israel. Now, at the same time, we find that Ruth, by the fact that she is married to Machlon, she is connected to a family, and therefore there, as we'll see soon, some kind of redemption being done by her marrying a family member, which would indicate, on the other hand, that she was already in some ways Jewish already when she married Machlon. Because if she wasn't Jewish, if the young man marries a woman that's not Jewish, right, and then he dies, and then she converts afterwards, there's no attachment at all to the family. So that would indicate that the conversion occurred a little bit earlier. Obviously, we can't really understand it that way, because if she converted, you would imagine Orpah converted, and she would not get that rejection. So it seems to be that the conversion was some kind of process here. And the way the Rambam explains is that there were times that the official courts would not accept converts. Converts were accepted by individuals. If afterwards their actions indicate that they do it for the right reason, so retroactively they are Jewish. So you hear what's happening here. That she is a Jew, but it's a retroactive conversion, and therefore her marriage to Machlon was indeed a Jewish marriage. That's the way to understand it. So now, chapter 2 on page 1270. Now, Naomi is a woman that is going through tremendous difficulty for returning home with absolutely nothing, with no family, but just a daughter-in-law that is very committed to her. And this daughter-in-law tells her in verse 2, I will be the one, let me go out to the field, I will glean among the ears of grain, let me do it, you don't worry about it, which is a tremendous act of kindness. Here she is a foreigner, she's going to take the responsibility of taking care of her mother-in-law. Tremendous act of kindness. And she does it for many, many hours. Now, in verse 4, after we are told that she happens to be in the field of a fellow by the name of Boaz, so in verse 4 is actually a key to share with us why and how there was a recovery in the nation of Israel, that their flaws were dealt with. And here is the solution to the big problem the nation had. So here we go, verse 4. Vehine, as Ruth is there gleaning, Boaz ba mi Betlechem. Boaz makes his appearance from Betlechem. Vayomer la kotzrim, and he turns to the harvesters and he says to them, Hashem imachem, may Hashem be with you. Vayomru lo, and they respond, Yivarechecha Hashem, may God bless you. Okay, this is a very nice way of welcoming people. God should be with you. Be blessed by God. By the way, if you've ever been in a Sephardi shul, every time they get an aliyah, when they get up, and they like, they Hashem Emachem, Yivaracha Hashem. This is part of their aliyah. It's obviously very nice words. What's it all about? So the Gemara tells us that you should know that Boaz establishes a new way of welcoming people. You want to welcome someone? Do it with the name of God. This is what Boaz establishes. He takes over the role as a leader, and this is something that he establishes, that when you welcome someone, throw in the name of God. What's so important about that? Often when we talk to one another, we could just use words that have absolutely no meaning, right? Like a person could be really could say to another person, oh, thank you very much. What they're really saying is, go fly a kite, right? We know that. You turn to someone and you say, oh, welcome, how are you? What you really might mean, I'm not saying in any specific case, I just had two sisters coming together, but at times, there could be situations when you say, oh, been a long time, I haven't seen you. What you're really saying is, Chaval, I wish it would be another 12 months that I don't see you. Not in this case, but these things do exist among people. Not everything said. Sometimes you do have some clips of comedy where you have people saying things and what they really, really mean, right? You know very well what. In Judaism, we are blessed that we have these generic statements that you say. When someone asks you a question, how are things? Baruch Hashem. It could mean anything. It could mean great, or it could mean Rabbanu Shalom, help us, right? So we have these generic, but people don't always, what they're really saying, where's the song? I love you. Who sings that? Man, no. Jimmy Durant, that's what it is? Okay.
Jimmy Durant?
They'll forgive me. Now, with that, when you have a society that the leaders are corrupt, people are going to be corrupt. And when you have a society where, like we lived in Mexico, you know how you become a policeman in Mexico, right? You have to bribe a police official, you become a policeman. And then you have your parnasa, because then you stop people and you ask them for a little bit of a bribery. And that's that, and that's how you are, that's how you get into the country. My mother always mentions that her introduction to Mexico was, when they arrived there in '76, was that they come to passport control, and the fellow says to them, everything will be fine. He like moves his fingers like that. And my father understood South American because he was from Uruguay. And he knew the language. He knew how things work, that everything is fine. But you have to know, and there was a specific, page, perhaps it had a meaning of page 18 in the passport, that high dollars you put there, and that's how you get through. This is how things are done right now. Tell me, what kind of society is that? Are you concerned about the welfare of other? Are you creating a society? Things are collapsing. Boaz deals with it. And the first way you deal with it is that you actually are concerned for the welfare of another person. Now, we have this sensitivity not to use the name of God in vain. Very much part of our religion. And it was so significant for people that this awareness was brought to cure the marketplace. Right? You know the rule that people have a financial dispute. So what do? You take them to court and you make them take an oath. When you tell a person you got to take an oath, they would get afraid because it's the name of God. That was the religion. Right? Torah was given to a society that was pagan. For pagan people, there are these serious violations, and they adopted that violating the name of God is indeed important. We agree with that. But Almighty wants us to become a just society. And the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu achieves it is by telling us that same fear you have of misusing my name, have that same fear of being dishonest in the marketplace, right? It was a nasty joke. That we had that was shared in yeshiva. That there was once a guy that used to leave some milk in the fridge in yeshiva, and people would take a little bit of his milk, and it was very disturbed. He wanted milk for his coffee, so he put a sign: "Please don't take. It's gneva," and still people were taking milk. So he thought of a good idea. He wrote on it, "Not Chalav Yisrael," right? And then no one took any more. That was the joke. Now, I don't think it happened, but what's the idea behind the joke? There are people, unfortunately, that when it comes to the laws of, kashrut, and the laws of the names of God, or of the proper amount, they'll be very concerned. But when it comes to honesty in the marketplace, when it comes to being concerned for the welfare of those who need it, they're already, you learn how to cut corners, right? You have some shtick that you do. The God of Israel wants us to take this awareness, take the fact that we fear uttering the name of God in vain, and apply it to the marketplace. That's what Judaism is really about. And if you look at the Aseret HaDibrot, we talk often about the fact that number 3 corresponds to number 8. Right. Number 3 being, don't utter the name of God in vain. And then that corresponds to lo tignov. How do we avoid, right, the corruption in the marketplace? Have that awareness. So here we have Boaz. Boaz recognizes this nation. And he knows very well that what we have to do is we have to teach people, be concerned for others, right? Chesed. People have financial needs. People have emotional needs. Develop a society of concern. So what do? You infuse the name of God, which was important for them, in social interactions. When you walk and you greet someone, you go ahead and you turn to them and you say, Hashem imachem. You obviously have to mean it, because otherwise it's a bracha levatolo. And respond, Yivarechecha Hashem. This is how we are curing a society here. It's interesting that earlier today, I picked up my daughter, who came back from Israel after spending a year in Israel. Okay, very nice. So I picked her up. Now, I've heard over the years that there's a challenge at times, because they come back from Israel and they're in the clouds, right? Sometimes in spiritual clouds, right? That they have a term for it among the young people, that they flipped out. You've heard this term. That they come to Israel and suddenly. And, thank God now with my daughter, but sometimes there's a concern that exists, that you have people that quote-unquote flip out, and they're going to daven much longer, and they're going to eat more matzah probably, But the question is, are they going to deal with sensitivity towards family members because they became far more religious, right? Sometimes the emphasis of what Judaism is about is not tilted the way it should be. These things are valuable, there's no question. It's good to eat matzah, especially if you enjoy it. But to go ahead and ignore the Ben Adam L'Chaveiro, that's not Judaism. It must be balanced. And that's what Boaz is achieving here. He's creating balance. People are concerned for one another, so he's building a grassroots movement of building up a society the way it should be. Now, what's interesting about Megillas Roos is the fact that you read about kindness. You read about Boaz's kindness towards this young lady. This young lady, by the way, you would naturally expect her to join a nation, want to marry a young man and start a life. She actually, due to spiritual calculations, is willing to marry the old man Boaz, which she says straight out, this is a tremendous kindness that you are willing to do for the soul of your husband, because by marrying into the family, there's continuity there. It is all about kindness. Kindness by this young lady by the name of Ruth. It's, as we read Ruth on the day of Kabbalat Torah, we don't really understand it to the full extent, but if you would imagine 19th century even, people had their social caste. In other words, you have people from families believing that they are royalty. I remember meeting someone once from India. I took a course in Memphis with him, and he tells me that you should know that I'm a Gupta. I'm a Gupta. I said, okay. I'm not a Gupta, Like, well, what's meant us? And then afterwards I understood that among them, in India, if you're a Gupta, it's a Gupta, it's like a Soloveitchik. In other words, you have this idea that if you're from this great rabbinic family, right, you're a somebody, you're going to treat it. And it's something that did exist. It even exists among us Jews. I believe, I know a person who is a tremendous Torah scholar, and he came from a family that his father was a shamish in a shul. Right. I know someone else who became a tremendous Torah scholar and one of the great educators in North America. He comes from a family of bakers. His father was a baker. Okay. Now, there was a tremendous opportunity that America created, that if you go to a rabbinic institution and you put effort into it, your last name is not going to make a difference. It's what you do, it's what you achieve. And these opportunities did not exist in the past, not for us Jews. There are such stories, but it wasn't the norm, and for sure not in society. And this is a book that tells us, you want to go ahead and become a Torah Jew, you have to understand that the family you were born into, right, your background, your royalty is worthless. Because look at Elimelech. He is the failure, right? He's the tragic failure of this story. Who is the hero? You know that Ruth, when she joined the nation of Israel, there was even a question mark if it is permissible for a Jew to marry her. Why? Because you open the text in the Torah tells us, Lo yavo Moavi ve'amoni bekal Hashem, that you're not supposed to marry into the Moabites. So here she joins the nation, and there is even a question mark regarding her status. The rabbis tell us that even her descendant, right, her great-grandchild, David HaMelech, as when he was a young man, there were still those among the nation that believed that he is questionable, because after all, he is a descendant of a Moabite woman. There's a question about her status. It was clear, and this is something that Boaz clarified to others. Boaz clarified that you should know, yes, the Torah tells us that you don't marry into the nation of Moab, but that is only the males, not the females. But, once there is a question, you know how things work, that if there's a question on something, you hear about a specific product in the supermarket, that there was a rumor of a recall, but don't worry about it. And then you see it in the supermarket. Are you going to pick it up? Right? Obviously not. So there were people walking around in that generation with, machmirim. Yes, there was a rabbinic ruling that it's fine, but we're going to keep away from her. Imagine what she went through to join the nation of Israel. But she did it because she was concerned for, she understood her role. It was an act of kindness to her husband, to the God of Israel, to the people of Israel. And she produces, it is her great-grandchild. Now this is how the text ends. with David HaMelech, the person who was who was in essence going to fix the flaws of humanity. That's part of our faith, the coming of Mashiach. Who is Torah for? That's why we read this on Shavuos. Who is Torah for? Don't think that this is a book, that this is a tradition that belongs only to the great people that have these tremendous last names. In other words, I personally, if I would have to change my last name, I would change Katzenellenbogen. You ask me why? Because I look at rabbinic literature and I read about the Katzenellenbogens of the 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th century. I'm jealous, right? That's the last name. You know, ich bin not a Gupta Katzenellenbogen. Right? That was a real last name. But Judaism, and this Megillah is telling me that's not how Judaism works. You do whoever you are, right? Whatever family, whatever side of the tracks you come from, there are things you could achieve. You could fulfill the mission. You could create the David HaMelech. And I see it a lot, right, in this generation, that there are people that did not have the quote-unquote, the yichus. There's still people that walk around, right? Yichus, you know who I am, my... it's nice, not taking it away from, especially you sponsor the class. I'm not telling you that genealogy is not is not very important to know who you are, right? I carry pride also, right? I know that I'm generation 105 from David HaMelech. Do you think that makes one iota of a difference? Yes, it does, because when my child needs to do a project in 8th grade for school, I have material for him, right? But besides that, does that really change who I am? I know very well that if I don't act the way I should, right, it is worth absolutely nothing. And if I do act as I should, okay, big deal. So this is what the book is telling us, and this is what the essence of Kabbalah Satorah is. It's interesting to note that Rus is chesed. Come the rabbis and they tell us the following. We read into all the names of all the people here. We read into Machlon, Kilion, Orpah, right, Elimelech. What does Rus mean? Compassion. Compassion, also true. There's compassion. But the rabbis give it, no question there, but we're going to add to it. We're going to add to it. Talmud asks my roots. So the Talmud tells us, Sherivahu, like Yirveun Mibesh, there are verses that indicate Ra means saturated. Saturated. That she had a great-grandchild, which obviously is attributed to her. She gets the credit. Because Ruth, Zachta v'yatza mimena David, she merited to have a descendant David. Sheriveu, that saturated God with shirot v'tishbachot. Saturated God with songs and hymns. Saturation. Now, what does saturation have to do with... the name means saturation, but what does that have to do with kindness, with chesed? This is a book of chesed. And it seems to be that in Judaism, there's a verse in Mishlei, Gomel nafsho ish chesed. You want to be a person of chesed? It starts off with doing for yourself. Doing for yourself. In other words, a person has to wake up in the morning and feel, I'm good. I have a relationship with God. I do good things. I'm a happy person. When you interact with the world feeling good about yourself, feeling saturated with blessing and with a beautiful day and with the greenery and with the blue sky and with happiness, then you could go ahead and do for others. That's how it works. When you go ahead and feel that I am full, I am saturated, then I could praise God for the wonderful life I have, and I could be kind, and I can inspire others, and I could do act of kindness. The person who walks around feeling empty, I didn't, no one said hello to me today, and breakfast was no good. Why God? Why couldn't you work it out? Right? That the sidewalk was a little bit cleaner where I had this stuff. If you, on the other hand, this feeling of emptiness, the person who is extremely needy is not going to be doing kindness to others because they're focused on themselves. Ruth is kindness, but Ruth is, you feel saturated, you feel full. And this is what Ruth is about. The confidence, think about a young lady coming from the journey. This is not an El journey from the land of Moabite. This is they walk from the land of the Moabites. They come into a culture that's a foreign culture to the young lady, with absolutely nothing financially. A mother-in-law who does know people, right? Can't the mother-in-law go ahead and just ask a relative, and I shouldn't act like a poor person? The rabbis have a tradition that she came from a royal family back in Moab. Here we have a daughter of royalty interacting with a new society, and she has to be acting like the poor, like the schleppers, gathering stock by stock to go ahead and produce something to bring for the mother-in-law who is local. But that's root. That is root. She's okay with it. She's comfortable with herself, and therefore she does this kindness, this incredible kindness, where she is living a life which is not, I don't think, a happiest life. Right? An old husband, the rabbis even have a tradition that he didn't survive too long. Right? An old husband, a new society, a question mark on her descendants. This is what's happening. There's a question mark on her descendants. But what does she merit? She merits that we have a David HaMelech, and the result is a Tehillim. How do we praise God? We praise God through the words of her descendant, because she is the one, she is the root for praise. Now, root, I'm not saying in the English, but she is really the core, she is the essence of praise. So it's obviously a beautiful name, and it's a beautiful text, and it's a beautiful message for Shavuot. We don't walk in, as we are told, that there is a Keter Kehuna, and there's a Keter of Malchut, but there's the greatest crown, and the greatest crown belongs to everyone. Keter Torah is for humanity in essence, right? We know very well that it's not just for the Jewish people. Anyone can join us. We're not a racist nation. Anyone can join us and carry that Keter Torah. And this is the text. You walk around with, you know who I am? There's a failure. You have that humility, right? And you feel happy with your relationship with God. You feel meruveh. You feel saturated. You have this magnificent story, the story of Ruth. And she upgraded Ruth, meaning she had the 7 Noachite laws beforehand, right? She upgrades from 7 to 613. So she is a 606, and the numerical value of Ruth is obviously the 606 for those of you who like your gematrias. Everyone have a Chag Sameach. Thank you again. And we'll see, not next week. I think next week's the day after Shavuot. And we're going to all be dealing with the lactose in the system and all that. And therefore, a week after that, we're back on. So next week, a day off.
Why are we just saying a day of
That is an excellent question. Do you want to vote on it? If everyone commits, we'll have a class next week.
I think we should have a class.
Okay, we will see you next week, Bezrat Hashem. That was easy.